Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Policy and Projects Committee of the Athens in Motion Commission. And sorry, we're a little late getting started. We had to post some links. We wanted to make sure that the public would be able to watch us. So I'll pull up the agenda. Screen. All right. So this is our agenda for today. I do have an addition that I'm going to go ahead and include on here, and that is, I'll probably include it before Tier 1. In addition to Complete Streets Policy Update and discussing the Tier 1, our next round of Tier 1 projects in T-Splost, would like to discuss Barber Street a little bit and next steps. And that doesn't, we will also talk about this as an entire commission probably, but since this is policy and projects, that we determined that it is appropriate for us to discuss where we are with that. So I guess I'm just going to put it on here. We're going to try and end this at 6. Does anyone have a hard stop at 6?
We have something at 6:30, but it would take some time to travel there. So if we could do 15 at the latest.
All right, so we'll really try and end as quickly after 6 as we can. We'll just have to
yeah. I'll have to step out a few minutes early. I have another meeting at 6.
Gotcha. Thank you, Randy. All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Right, so this is our agenda, and last time Teresa enough to take our minutes. So thank you, Teresa, for doing that.
You're welcome. Did I send them to the right place and the right person?
Say that, Teresa.
Oh, it looks like I did. Okay, good. My question was if I sent it to the right place and the right person. I was about to leave to go on my trip to see my children, and so anyway, I had to run out.
Yeah. Loved how at this point in the meeting T-Splost was going to happen like later, and now it's going to happen much sooner. How much has changed?
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, entertain a motion to approve our minutes.
Well, did we finish them up at the end? There's still a couple of question marks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just because, I had to leave, and so I was hoping that somebody could look at it. So our next meeting is. Sorry?
We pretty much got off after you left, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so we can get rid of that question mark after June 9th, because that's right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess we adjourned at what, 6?
Yeah, it was like 6:02 or 6:04 or something like that.
All right. And then in that case, then I would say the minutes are complete.
Okay. I'll make those. I don't know if I can do that right now because and I'll fix Elliot's name.
Oh yeah, and on the attendees, there's I just want to make sure I had everybody there. I thought I had everyone, but sometimes things slip by.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. And we need someone to take the minutes for this time. I can offer to do that. It will probably just be an overview of conversation and action items. So I am willing to do that. If that's okay with everyone.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So next item on the agenda is the status of the Complete Streets policy rewrite, which you'll remember at our last full commission meeting, we voted to send that along the way. And I believe that is moving forward. Daniel, what's the latest on that?
So it looks like Stephen would have the latest, and I don't think he's able to make it yet. But the word that I got is that he spoke with Blaine yesterday about it, and he's going to be reviewing a copy of the final draft for comment. And yeah, and so this was that email. I think, yes, you were on it as well. So yeah, so whatever response he sends back, I think it was the work plans that he had requested or something. Let's see, do you have a copy of the annual task list?
Yeah.
It's yeah, the document you send to mayor and commission each year that shows upcoming projects. So that's just to kind of know when y'all first task yourself to work on it. But yeah, so he is going to be reviewing the copy that you guys sent, and hopefully we'll hear back soon.
Thanks. That's the information I had. So we're on the same page.
Perfect.
So I just I sent along to Stephen the 2 work plans that we had from 2021 where we indicated that we were working on the Complete Streets policy. That's all it says. Randy, our work plan, it's not everything that we're tasked with doing. It's just the official policy type stuff that we're going to be working on to give the mayor and commission a heads up and get there. I don't know if we're looking for approval, but you know, to let them know what's coming. Because policy stuff is big stuff. All right, next on the agenda is Barber Street, and let's try and keep this to 10 minutes so we can move forward again. We are going to talk about this as an entire commission at our June meeting. We'll probably have some more information, direction, things to go with that. So we attended the Mayor and Commission work session last night. It was Daniel, Stephen, Ronnie, so TPW staff, Jared from Tool, and myself. And we also had a preliminary check-in, and Mark was there. And so we presented these options to the Mayor and Commission again, mainly focusing on the segment from Boulevard, the segment of Barber Street from Boulevard to Prince Avenue. And they just wanted to know the reasoning behind our recommendations. And we talked about that and tried to provide some context. One of the things we mentioned was the current level of comfort for that segment of Barber Street, which in our plan, there's a level of comfort scale from 1 to 5, 5 being the most uncomfortable roads that cyclists really wouldn't generally bike down, only the most fearless. And so to give you some context, Jefferson River Road is a level 4 at one part at the beginning where we decided to put that multi-use path, and then further down it's level 5. This segment of Barber Street from Boulevard to Prince is a level 2, so that means that beginner cyclist adults would feel okay with biking through this area. And then as you go further down, the level of comfort decreases to 3 or 4. So we tried to, you know, explain that, tried to help them understand like why we suggest multi-use paths for some places and why it was not recommended for this segment of Barber Street. And we explained the traffic calming measures that we wanted to take. And there was a desire from some commissioners to have, they felt like there could be more that would be appropriate. And so that was Commissioners Denson and Edwards, and also Commissioner Thornton agreed.
I do have an update that I could run by you guys. So I think moving forward, as far as next steps go, I just received this a little bit ago. So This is from Ronnie. He had a conversation with Jared earlier. And while segment 4 clearly needs further examination, design efforts, public input, it might be best to recommend moving with a CDO on the remaining 3 segments. So this would basically move segment 4 out of there, and we could continue working on that, and then we could move forward with the other 3 segments. So the next move would depend heavily on whether they put together a CDO on the Mayor and Commission that approves the project concepts on all the segments. But more specifically, let's see, and I haven't fully read this, so sorry if it sounds disjointed. So approved project concept for 2-way separate bike facility with 5-foot sidewalk on segments 1 through 3 as presented on attachment 1. Hold advanced design efforts on segment 4 and limiting design work to include topographic survey and base map, including the intersection of Barber Street and Prince Avenue. Prioritize Barber Street Phase 2 bike and pedestrian project from Boulevard to Prince Avenue to be next on Athens in Motion plans, and direct staff to develop multiple alternatives to move forward following ACC typical capital improvement process with collaboration with Prince Avenue corridor study projects, and including, this is a list of all the different options, 10-foot multi-use path, retaining on-street parking, 10-foot multi-use path, removing on-street parking. Those 2 same options, but with a 12-foot multi-use path, and then a 2-way cycle track and a 5-foot sidewalk with on-street parking, and once again with off-street parking. So basically 3 options of 10-foot multi-use path, 12-foot multi-use path, and 2-way cycle track and 5-foot sidewalk. And then on-street parking with those, or removing that, and then we would get full cost estimates for all of those. So that would kind of be the in-depth, they want to really explore the options. Those are the options that really are feasible, I think, in what they're talking about. So.
Hey, Daniel, when we do discuss this as a full group, it would be really helpful to have cross sections for each of those options so we could, really understand that. Is that possible, or?
When is our next meeting?
2 weeks,
2 weeks.
roughly.
Stephen, would we be able to, I don't know, I haven't asked Jared that.
Okay.
What do you think?
Or maybe even exemplars from the Athens in Motion appendices where we have cross sections, a bunch of cross sections in there, maybe at least have some, shared language as we discuss it. Anyway, just a request. I don't know if it's possible or feasible.
Those cross sections also, wouldn't they be pretty similar to the cross sections for segments 1 and 3, 1 through 3 alternate? So like the multi-use path alternative there.
Yeah.
Yeah, minus the 12-foot. From what I understood, the 12-foot was just a bit under the right-of-way need for the 2-way cycle track with 5-foot sidewalks. So we can maybe use our imagination a little bit on what that would look like, but yeah, sort of in the middle there.
Okay.
Daniel, the one thing that I wanted to bring up with that list, so we kind of glazed over it. One of Ronnie's requests was that while we would wait, we would hold on and not do the advanced design efforts for segment 4. We would want to go ahead and do the survey for segment 4, specifically so that we would know the exact right-of-way impacts of all of those alternatives, because that seemed to be one of the biggest questions that Mayor and Commission were having, is what is the actual take from property owners and what's the cost behind that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did kind of glaze over that, so thanks for highlighting that.
And sorry, then one other thing, other than those 6 alternatives, I had also asked if when this comes back to Athens in Motion Commission, if you all, were okay with those. I wanted you to look at all 6 of those, but to see if there was also a potential 7 or 8, that you'd want to add to that as well. Keeping in mind that we have to put it in context of what segments 1 and 3 are also would end up having, and what the intersection at Prince would look like.
Yeah, I was really concerned about what was happening with Prince Avenue, because I see, I have a little bit of fear that we're going to be working on these things in silos rather than as a system. So I really want us to be sure we avoid that.
Yeah, and luckily, we are all kind of working together on that. So I don't know if Tool is actually working on prints. Was that Banesh that did the prints work for us?
Yeah, and Banesh and Tool are closely related. Yeah.
So yeah, they all work together really well. So we'll make sure that that gets factored in. I did mention at our last corridor meeting to please factor in the Barber Street work as they develop those plans. You know, as y'all know, the discussion for Prince Avenue is right after that, and there was some discussion within the Prince Avenue group about the concern that we talked about three-laning those two segments of Prince Avenue, segments being from Millage to Barber and from Barber to Pulaski, and we kind of separated out three-laning from the bike lanes. And so I just wanted to clarify that the reason we did that was because there's really, you know, there's the vehicular side of three-laning and the impacts there. But even, you know, if it gets three-lane, there are a lot of options that we can do as far as bike infrastructure. If it can't be three-lane, then we really need to explore, you know, other options to see what is there room for, because we still want bike infrastructure through there. And I think one of my concerns is if we're kind of working on, you know, we want the Prince Avenue intersection to be part of the Prince Avenue corridor project, and those timelines might match up, they might not. So I don't know, you know, because with Prince Avenue, we have to prioritize the projects to see what order they fall in, and then there's the design, and so with every other improvement that we've made along Barber Street, or that we've proposed along Barber Street, we were kind of saying, you know, for segment 1 and 2, if y'all only choose that, then y'all also wrap in the intersections, because we need to transition from this infrastructure into our city infrastructure. And the Prince Avenue intersection wasn't included in that segment 4. And so that's kind of my concern is right now, if we bring like a 12-foot multi-use path just up to the corner, and then it just kind of stops, and then you walk your bike over back into the roadway and then get on the road, or cross the crosswalk to then get into the roadway. And I think one thing that could be highlighted in all of those alternatives is that no matter what, we will have the raised crosswalks, the signage, the bump outs, you know, all of those safety measures that really were part of that first recommended alternative. And maybe calling it an alternative wasn't the best like approach. It's really like step, you know, phase 1 of those improvements. And our recommendation was, let's knock out phase 1 to go ahead and make it safe, and then we can explore in the future what that phase 2 is going to look like. But that was my take on it.
All right, so let me make sure I understand what the next steps are. Wait and see if the mayor and commission, if the commissioners come up with a CDO, a whole vote on it, then that's fine. If not, go ahead and encourage a vote for segments 1 through 3 and have the mayor and commission or the commissioners vote on that. And then in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and do a survey for segment 4. That's definitely going to happen at this point. And then if there's not the CDO that's voted on, we will go through and look into these 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, as Stephen suggested, options for segment 4. Did I understand that? Is that the right order?
So based on what, and I'll have to go back and listen, but I believe we shouldn't wait on a CDO from mayor and commission. I mean, we could work in tandem with them if we wanted to. If they, I know that Carol might want to push something through quicker than, but I think they were really looking to Athens in Motion to, like Mayor Gertz said, all right, we've said a lot of different options here. What we really would like is Athens in Motion to kind of aggregate everything that's been said and still come back with a recommendation or two. And so I don't think we need to wait on commissioners at this point.
Are we able to say something to the effect that what we do in segment 4 is somewhat, maybe largely, dependent on what happens with Prince Avenue? I mean, I kind of feel like that's really critical. I mean, because if we're gonna like have something just die into Prince Avenue and nothing happens to Prince Avenue, that's not a good solution.
I mean, I don't sense that they're going to be improvements at that intersection, but there's no radical restructuring of the intersection other than possibly the three laning, not radical, but extensive, I guess would be a better word. And I don't recall anything beyond improved the signals, placement of the buttons, maybe changing how some of the driveway entrances are configured. Those are some of the things that came up.
So no
Would you-
specific bicycle infrastructure along Prince at that
Oh,
particular
yeah, no.
road?
Well, that's something that we have been discussing. Yes, absolutely. But then there are
Okay.
questions about exactly how that would look. But yeah, we were advocating for, especially in that stretch from Millage to Pulaski, for bike lanes on both sides of the road. One of the issues was how that bike lane terminates into Pulaski, because it gets too narrow at that point, even for three laning plus bike lanes. And so there was some discussion about popping up onto a shared sidewalk and then turning onto Pulaski to the right. But anyway, I'm in the weeds a bit too much, but no, there definitely are some things we've been discussing.
Yeah, I feel like segment 4 is just it's a place where we could really screw it up or we could make it great, and I hope we don't really screw it up. I hope that what we do allows somebody to be driving along from wherever on Barber Street and to either go through and cross Prince Avenue or turn right or turn left and continue in a safe fashion on their bicycle or on their feet. Um, you know, so I just feel like these things should be done a little bit in tandem to some degree.
I'll say this. This is going to be super cynical, but after living in Athens for as many years as I have, if we wait for Prince, we're never getting anything done, because we've been talking about Prince for years, and it's so frustrating, and I'm very frustrated about it, Teresa. But it's like I feel like we can't wait on what we hope will happen with Prince.
Okay, well, that said, then why don't we sort of, I don't have a good football analogy because I don't know anything about football, but why don't we just like build the best thing that we can up to Prince that would make sense with either nothing happening at Prince or something happening at Prince.
I mean, I think a real strength is that we do have, Stephen and Daniel at the table in both of those groups, and in terms of coordinating some of that as well. I mean, I think that's important to keep in mind.
And
I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one strength of having Tool on board is, looking at how do you configure that approach to and from Prince on Barber, not knowing exactly what the infrastructure is going to be on Prince in terms of like, do you do bike box? If it's a two-way, how do you do that with, transitioning into either Prince without lanes or with lanes? I mean, I think, and then maybe that costs a little extra to talk about, but the intersection stuff is really important. And I think, we're starting to see more green painted, more bike boxes in Athens. So folks are going to start used to seeing that more. So I think being able to use those sort of tools in the toolbox could help us as well, potentially.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that, Jared pointed out that it's not that nothing can be done. There is a, perfect design, so to say, that is the safest and best alternative. And our limitation that we were really focusing in on was keeping it within budget. And if it's true that they don't want to see it stay within budget, then we can just say, all right, Jared, like, you and your team design the safest, best thing. And I think the survey is going to be an important part of that, so we could really see where things are, you know, where are right-of-way lines, all that kind of stuff, and to just say, you know, run these options and make it, you know, the ideal.
Are we in a position where we could put forward a T-Splost proposal for segment 4? You know, assuming that it will be beyond the budget that we have now. I mean, can we
I
do
think
that?
I think that's where Ronnie added in a little qualifier there that we could say that segment 4 is the next top tier project. And then our T-Splosh project would be for a similar format where it's tier 1 bike and tier 1 ped. And we could maybe even group those together, but because that seems to be where things are going with that. But with that, it would get moved to the front of the line. So that would still be our first project to do, but that project, the T-Splosh 22 or 3 description wouldn't really change that much. I wouldn't put it as an individual project. That's what I'm saying.
So you could really win over, especially Commissioner Edwards, if that was the language there, because his biggest thing was he doesn't want to see anything happen unless we have guarantee that segment 4 has something happening on it. And he kept saying, you know, sharrows are ridiculous. He wouldn't even acknowledge the other traffic calming. He just kept saying sharrows are ridiculous. So I think if there was some kind of verbal or written commitment from them that the bike ped funds from the next round of T-Splosh would get prioritized toward finishing this out first, you might at least win him over.
Well, I think we should do that.
I think we should probably move on to the next item.
Yeah, so along those lines is something we really need to do is pick our next tier 1 projects. And so that's the other thing where I feel a little frustrated with the Barber Street situation is we have other things we need to start talking about. And so I'm optimistic that we will be able to move forward soon. But so where we last left off with the next round tier 1 projects, Daniel, I think that you were going to come up with a list of double tier 1s with a high equity score. And by double tier 1s, we mean corridors, areas that are tier 1 both for bike facilities and pedestrian facilities. Have you been able to work on that?
I have not. I have a list of higher equity themed projects that we put forth earlier as a separate proposal, and I could show those. Well, put that together, but our server crashed. Let me see real quick if I sent that along. I think what I'd really like to do, and I know we're on a short timeline, is to maybe talk about, I know it's good to have like a specific set of projects and then do cost estimates and say this is how much this is going to cost, but we know that, you know, you give us $100 million, we'll have $100 million of projects. So it might be more of a conversation around how do you want to frame the ask and how do you want to qualify it so that when we do rerun the analysis, you know, so basically the SPOS proposal could say, finish out these projects from 2018. And the reason I throw that language in there is because that language was what they used for Greenway. And so 2011, they basically said it was established that legally they had to finish out all the 2011 projects before they could move to the 2018 projects because of the way that description was done. And so if that is what we're doing and we want to make sure that segment 4 gets done first, we could put that into the project description. And if that gets approved, then no matter what, like we still have to do segment 4. Now, all that saying, so basically what I'm getting at is I think it'll be a little while before I'm going to mess around with the tool that we got from Tool for reprioritization. I've already started looking at it, and I've got an intern helping me gather the data so that we can do that. But we're going to kind of have to run through some dry runs. And I don't think we'll get any output data in time for this particular proposal to have specific, like, here are the tier 1 projects as 2021 data has stated. So we can either go off of previous data from the 2017, or we can just come up with a lump sum of, we want this much money.
Yeah, okay, so at the very least, we need to submit a project that's either, our projects need to be submitted like either bike ped or bike and ped, and say like tier 1 projects from the Athens in Motion plan. And then I guess what I want to maybe check in with, and I want to see what Aaron thinks about this as well as Stephen and Daniel, is do you think that the TSOS committee will take a submission that is that open and vague if during the presentation we say like, and these are the tier 1 projects that we've come up with, because the presentation has a later date. And of course, either way, we're not going to say we're definitely doing these projects because we may not get to them all. But do we think that the committee would look at the materials and feel okay with that ahead of the presentation with specific projects mentioned? Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you know, Lauren, about how much the presentations factor in to what we chose. That's where we got a lot of our information. So I don't know. I think it's got to be a really good presentation. We've got to have time to really work on this too, and all. If that answers your question, I don't know.
Yeah, I really am trying to figure that out because we have such a tight deadline, like August 1st, right? Is that the date that you guys have heard still, Stephen and Daniel, August 1st?
So staff proposals are due by July 28th, but resident proposals, I think, are August 15th now. I'll have to double check, and I don't know. I think, and I want to ask them if it's a county organized user group, if that makes any difference on which of those deadlines you all have to meet. But it would be great if you could have those extra 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It should be the second one if they're doing it the same as 2020. The last time they were specifically staff, staff. So if TPW is putting forth the funding, then yeah, July 28th. But with you guys, we could work with you to come up with that.
And yeah, I think y'all want to put together some task groups maybe for each of the proposals. If there's a bucket and you have to decide if that bucket's both or either or. And then for the smaller projects as well, maybe have the task force for the ADA and compliance infrastructure, if that's one you want to pursue, and the local neighborhood sidewalks project, if that's something you want to pursue. Also, let me know if you don't want to pursue those, because we could still jump in. TBW may still want to jump in and lead those if you're not interested.
Yeah, one of the ideas that I was going through some previous emails. I've mentioned the accessibility grant, and I was thinking. So I'm just gonna share real quick a screenshot. So there's different areas around the county that have where we just recently went in and Transit had SPLOST funding for new bus shelters. And so they've got these new bus shelters with these nice concrete pads, but they don't necessarily have sidewalks leading to them. So this would kind of be a sidewalk gap type thing, but let me go ahead and share my screen. And so this is over on Cathwood Drive. We've got sidewalk along the roadway here, and it goes up to those condos. But over here, we've got this new bus stop with no sidewalks leading to it. So I'm thinking that within the accessibility proposal, I don't think we would ever be able to fully inventory. We might be able to, but fully inventory every bus stop and sidewalk gap. We have a lot of data, and we might be able to identify some of that based on here's where the new bus stop went. But this is kind of like there's these types of obstacles, and then there's also the another thing that I've mentioned before about that on North Chase Street, where we've got like these telephone poles in the middle of and this was pointed out to me by Elliot, and so this, for instance, right here, if you're in a wheelchair, you're going to have to come off and ride in the road along this area to get around this. And so it could specifically go towards, and so the writing of this particular project would be accessibility, to improve accessibility within our, sidewalk network. And then we would have kind of a sub-bulleted list of the different types of obstacles that we've seen. And so the other one is kind of a sidewalk gap, but also it's kind of an accessibility thing for transit. So those are just some of the ideas I was thinking for that particular project. But then another conversation I had with Steven was, and I haven't mentioned this yet. It's the I'm trying to remember what the phrase is. And I have it, small sidewalk projects. So really a lot of our funding went to Athens in Motion. Like that was our sidewalk bucket for sidewalk gaps and that kind of thing. Athens in Motion is really looking at the cohesive network as a whole. It's not really getting into those individual neighborhoods. And so there's kind of a gap between people over here who, we do have an option where like an HOA or residents can pay to have a sidewalk installed. But I'd be interested to see if there's kind of an equity component that we could add in where, it's like we have this bucket of money to do these smaller sidewalk projects that would be either sidewalk gaps or neighborhood connections to those amenities, or even, park and school. So like safe routes to school or park. There'd be kind of these criteria of like, if it falls within this range of things, then they could access this bucket of money and not have to, because Athens in Motion is only for Athens in Motion projects, which you might not have that on, like Cathwood doesn't have any priorities on the Athens in Motion plan. It didn't qualify. So aside from that, like we could rerun those things in the future to see what they would score. But yeah, that's kind of, that was a third idea that I had. Now, I don't know if those would all come from Athens in Motion. If some need to come from staff, then, we can focus on those and then y'all can work on the other ones. But I wanted to kind of toss out those ideas.
So as far as an ask goes, an amount of money, are we thinking like $1 million, $2 million for like the ADA gap for the small sidewalk considerations? Is that about the number, or is that too low?
Yeah, it's too high. With ADA considerations, it really depends. Daniel, if we're talking utility relocations, that can get pretty pricey, but we would need to maybe do a quick audit to see how prevalent these things are. So that'd be the first. We can quickly put together cost estimates on how much it costs to do this item or this item. But then we have to figure out, how widespread are these issues. With the neighborhood sidewalks or local sidewalk gaps, that kind of thing, I would imagine each project could be between $50,000 to $100,000. So you would just decide based on that how many projects you'd want to do.
Okay. I think it's a great strategy for us to submit these, and I think it's, I'm fine with it coming from Athens in Motion. I think, Aaron, you'll remember when we were doing straw polling for T-Splost, we always, some of us would have like $1 or $2 million left to spend. And so this is a great way for the people in that committee to maybe fill that in and get that on the list or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, are we thinking ballpark, like maybe like $1 million for ADA stuff, and then we could come back with an alternate,
Yeah.
lower, and then 2 million for small sidewalk considerations, and come back with an alternate for half that or something like that. Yeah, is that enough to do a 5-year program?
I think so. Especially the small sidewalk program, I would imagine we would be able to sell some of the efficiencies by saying that we could do a lot of that construction in house with streets and drainage.
Yeah.
And so with that being the case, it's how quickly they can do those. So yeah, that would keep them busy for 5 years for sure.
Okay. So like $2 million for small sidewalks, maybe an alternate of $1 million, and then $1 million for ADA, alternate of 500,000 roughly to be determined. Okay, yeah.
It might even be interesting to determine the small sidewalks based on kind of our staff's ability. Like, how many sidewalks can our staff actually pour in a year? And so, and we wouldn't want to fund it to the point to where they're going to be working overtime, and so
we can do about, within a few weeks, we could do about 400 feet of sidewalk.
Okay. So we could basically use as much money as is given. There's also the neighborhood traffic program that started up.
Yeah.
Is that something that can be supplemented with some projects?
So NTMP is definitely one that's on their radar already. I don't think that's necessarily Athens in Motion led, but it's certainly one that we'd put forward.
Right. Yeah.
Stephen, are y'all gonna definitely put in a project for intersection technology upgrades for sensoring? How much is that?
Yeah, so there's a few that would touch on that. There's actually going to be an intersection fund for actual improvements based on our matrix that kind of ranks the worst intersections in Athens. We've got a fiber program that we are pushing for, which would tie all of those intersections together to our traffic control center. And then also we're pushing for a smart cities technology fund, which would be a lot of those, interactive technologies where the signals talk to each other, and the signals would also be able to talk to vehicles as we get closer and closer to that type of technology.
Very cool.
Well, cool. Okay, we're at 6. Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, just one last thing. Commissioner Thornton mentioned last night, and I agree with her 100%, that she's really interested about data, right? And really being able to have these measurables. And I don't know if that becomes part of, we use a percentage of this funding or like some of this project from the tier 1, 2, 3 projects, from that kind of that funding to fund the data, or if we would need our own independent project.
Daniel, maybe we put together a subgroup with TPW staff that would talk about what those studies want to encapsulate pre and post, and that would help us determine if we could do it in-house or we need to sub it out. If we need to sub it out, though, that's certainly it would roll into the project cost for sure.
I mean, two things. One, are we talking crash data or just general data? Because we have the traffic safety research evaluation group at UGA, and they've run stuff for me all the time, and they're a great partner. And then GDOT is more than willing, their safety team are more than willing to run off-system data when it comes to crashes as well. So I don't know. I understand her need for data if it's particularly related to crashes and injuries, but maybe she wants more 3D, kind of three-dimensional data.
Yeah, so we have access to crash data through Numetrics and working with and Gears, I believe, and I think she was more interested, and this is where, you know, there's some room for, you know, bike counts. So counters, you know, before and after are, so we have all these projects that we've lined up that are under development now. And really, if we can get some hard, like before usage, and then we see the infrastructure put in, and then we see the after, and then if we do that on every one of our projects, we can see if we can pick out some patterns of, in this environment, you know, when a new bike facility is installed and there is no nearby bike facilities, then we see this percentage improvement of, you know, usage. Or if it connects into an existing network, we see this percentage. And, you know, that's what I would really like to get to, that level where we can have that. And I know that there are some other, like, you know, smart data solutions, like, you know, Streetlight, where you've sent that to me before, and hopefully we can, you know, start to work towards some of those things. But at the end of the day, some counters, and if there is some infrastructure that we can use to really inform that, that would be great.
I think John Devine, and maybe I've said this before, but I'm pretty sure John Devine at the Regional Commission has pneumatic counters, right? I think maybe they've never let ACC use them. I don't know, but I think they've used them, or at least bought them for use on trails or the Firefly, or I don't know. If we haven't reached out to him about that, we probably should. But maybe I'm just making that up, that that's there.
Dan, you want to bring John and then Jimmy Rowan into a conversation to see where we could kind of combine efforts?
Yeah, I think that that would be worthwhile thing.
Yeah,
Cool.
I really appreciate y'all being willing to capture that data, and I think it's good to look at before and afters. And I appreciate you guys getting our commissioners that information. And I just want to be mindful of how we're framing things, because I find the question sort of troubling, a little bit troubling to begin with. It's sort of like having to justify our presence. And I mean, Commissioner Thornton was wondering about, like, Hancock, do people actually bike it? Yes, I do in fact bike it. And it feels similar to that question of, I saw an empty bus go by, so why do we have buses type deal. So if we can somehow, you know, provide the data, get the information, but also, you know, still make sure that we don't, what am I trying to say here? That we don't support this notion that we have to defend cyclists having any infrastructure, or that vulnerable users need it.
Right.
I feel a little defensive there, and I don't want to be, but I do feel defensive.
Yeah. Similar, you know, commissioners in the past have said things disparaging about cyclists too. And I felt the same way. And we can always, you know, come up with our own anecdotal evidence of one way or another, you know, one thing or another. But yeah, we obviously need more infrastructure.
Well, and you know, I sent this to Lauren already, but there's a video on YouTube I watched, and this guy kind of pointed out, it's kind of interesting that as soon as you pick up your helmet and you get on your bike, you're now a cyclist. If the most convenient route to get from point A to point B was the bus, he'd take the bus. If it's the bike, he'd take the bike. If it was the car, he would drive. And you know, when I pick up my car keys, I don't get labeled a driver and then get fit into kind of like, oh, those drivers, they're always, you know, driving drunk and, you know, running into pedestrians. And, you know, it's the same thing, you know, like cyclists don't blow through stoplights, and, you know, like that's a generalist, and that person may not be like consider themselves a cyclist. You know, that they might just say, yeah, I live here, I work there, I can't afford parking, or it's quicker for me rather than having to park on South Campus to just bike into straight to my office. There's a lot of reasons why people choose to bike, and I think highlighting that as part of an education strategy would be really valuable.
Yeah. Okay, so two things, and I know that we need to end this. It's not enough hours in the day. What I would like to know from this group is, do we want to look at tier 1 projects as they stand now, or do we want to try and give Daniel some more time to come up with that, so we have something to work with in submitting a T-SPLOS proposal?
Well, I would say, since time is short, my idea is that we craft our T-SPLOS proposal in a way that we we pick out some double tier 1 projects from our existing list. Let's just work with that, and then add the provision that we are constantly evaluating the needs on the ground, and we do need the flexibility to make some changes.
So what is, forgive me for not knowing this, I must have missed the meeting. What is double tier 1? What does that refer to?
By
Is it changing the prioritization process?
we can
No,
go
it's
projects that overlap, but you got your tier 1 bike
and tier 1 bike.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
maybe we could frame that as a motion and how about this? I'll say, we'll craft a proposal. Do we want to wait? Okay, so if we go this route, then we're combining bike and ped buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Do we feel comfortable with that? Because so our current funding is a bike bucket, ped bucket, which the strategy behind that really is just to have 2 projects so the Citizens Advisory Committee feels like they have choices.
Mm-hmm.
It makes things a little difficult. It's more of a marketing thing. So we do take some risk in creating one big bucket. But if we're framing it as Teresa put it, in terms of we're really focusing on double tier 1 projects and some other stuff, then it could make sense.
Are we proposing 4 or 5 or 6 projects, and then they are going to pick among those, right? We'll fund these 3, but not those.
What we will really say is we're saying we want a bucket of money to continue with our tier 1 projects. Currently, we have determined that these double tier 1 projects are high priority. And as Teresa said, we're revising this list. So in the referendum, it's not going to say specifically what projects, but we want to give the committee something to look at, to work with ultimately. So that's why we do need to be a little bit specific or move towards some specificity.
Mm-hmm. Well, we already have these 2 lists that have already been approved by, God and everybody else. So I just, if we can start with that and say, we're going to be emphasizing those tier 1 projects, especially those that have both tier 1 bike and ped. And, but we're also always evaluating, the situation in the county so that we can be sure we're putting the money where it will do the most good.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll begin to put together a proposal with finishing current projects. So current T-SPLOS projects, and then double tier 1s as our top priority with additional projects. And then the other couple, and then the ADA bucket, and then the small sidewalks. So Daniel, in order for this to come from us, what do you need from us to work with? How do we work with you? How do we collaborate at this point so we can get this stuff submitted by August 1st or August 15th or July 28th?
I think a lot of it will be the narrative.
Okay.
We don't have the form, like the application yet, but we can assume that it will be similar to 2020. So if y'all can kind of look back, and I'm not sure, you may be able to request it if you can't find it, but if we could basically frame it around that, or even the 2018 might be a better one to look at because it's T-SPLOS.
Yeah.
So, and then we start working on that narrative of here's what here's the description, here's the scope, like here's the justification, and we really need to start building up those. So I think something that would be really helpful from you guys would be to kind of go through the Athens Motion Plan to identify those double tier projects in the tables, because there's some I've been trying to double check the data, and the data is missing. Some of it's just not correct. So I'd be a little nervous about utilizing the map to make decisions if it's incorrect. So I haven't had a chance to verify that. So if we go straight to the source of those tables, and then just kind of track that in a spreadsheet to see, okay, what are our double tier 1s? Is that the best descriptor? Or is there some other approach? And then I think the last thing would be if we are going to mention finishing up 2018 projects, definitely we want to go back and get that project description from 2018 to make sure we're not locking ourselves into all of this funding is going to go to those projects and we can't use any on the because I don't know exactly what that description was based off of, but you want to frame it in a way where legally, and that's where we could potentially get help from maybe our attorney's office.
Okay, I have another question about this whole thing. How do we figure out how much money to ask for? I mean, we talked about ADA and small sidewalks, but what about the good stuff?
We can help with that. So that's one of the biggest things that staff can step in and help with. We can base it on, the old estimates plus inflation and look at, all that. So that's something we can help with.
Yeah.
One other thing added to Daniel's list is, and maybe this is at the next big group meeting, you may want to pick a project manager or a project management team, core team for each of these. So that, of course, it's going to be a group effort on all of it, but you want to have somebody who's sort of facilitating and moving the ball forward on each of them. It also helps with the staff interactions, so we'd have the one person to go to for each project.
Okay, so
So
things.
yeah, and identifying the total number of projects that y'all want to come forth with, and then I think I agree. A project manager for each one would be helpful.
Okay, so that limits us to what, maybe 5 projects like we did before? I mean, because if we have too many projects, then it's going to be a disaster.
I think it's based on the money, though, right? How much money? Yeah. We won't know that till we know the amount of money we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And we should have alternate ideas because they will probably come back ask for an alternate. So we should ask for as much money as we think it will take, and maybe even more based on conversations about Barber Street, because they don't seem to care. Money doesn't seem to be a concern for the commission. It's just what it takes. So we want to keep that in mind. So what we can work on between now and then is finding the old application, maybe starting those, but we need to appoint a project manager for each. These are things we can do offline and be okay. We don't have to do that in a meeting.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Cool. I know we're way over time.
I'm gonna try to bike home and beat the rain.
Okay. Yeah. Aaron, you can go ahead and go.
Okay.
I
See
work-
y'all.
I'll need to be leaving here shortly too. I can try handing off to Stephen. Unless you want to go ahead and adjourn.
We can go ahead and adjourn. Our next meeting date is, did I put it on here when I thought it would be? I just wanted to, I think I suggested Wednesday, July 7th. Are we all around for that? Yeah.
7th. Yes.
All right. Wednesday, July
I will
7th.
be in. You guys go. You can do that one without me. I'll be in Washington D.C., but that'll be fun.
Stephen will be in DC. Cool. Great. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All right. Mark makes it. I'll second it. Thanks, guys.
All right. See ya.
Yeah.